All right, everybody, welcome back to the Zoop podcast. We are streaming live right now on YouTube and Facebook. When this is done streaming, it will live forever on YouTube and Facebook. You could also get the audio of it on Spotify, iTunes, wherever else you get your podcasts from. Today, we are joined by writer Steve Horton. Just launched his campaigns for his new book, 9 Lives, on Zoop yesterday. You could see on the screen right here or in the show description. Back the book. Go get this thing at zoop.gg/c/9lives. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing great. Great to be here.
Excellent. Like I mentioned, we launched yesterday. We had a real strong start. I think we already sold out of all the original art pages that were for sale. Am I correct on that?
That's right. A whole bunch of the extras are gone already. We're nearly halfway funded, and things are looking really good so far.
Excellent. And correct me if I'm wrong, is this your first crowdfunding effort?
Yes, this is. I've published many comics with many different publishers, but this is the first time I've ever self-published before, and it's definitely inspired me to do more in the future.
Well, I'm glad that you're having a positive experience so far. Hopefully, we can keep that up for you for the duration of this campaign. Just to let you know, there will be a lull, and that is very standard. Everyone experiences that during the middle of the campaign. We could discuss that more off camera, though, if you'd like.
Of course.
But let's talk about how this book came together. Your artist, your collaborator on this book, his name is Chris Peterson. And I know that this book is a long time in the making. We'll get to that. But first of all, how did you and Chris come together? Either specifically for this or just in general?
Well, we've been friends on social media for a while, and as you said, this book has been a long time in the making. And back when I first pitched this book many years ago, there wasn't really such a thing as crowdfunding. This is pre-crowdfunding, and we were going to pitch it to the traditional publishers. And I had an idea in mind about a woman who had been reincarnated 9 times throughout history. And I thought, why don't I find a really good artist for this? So I looked around on Twitter and places like that. And
maybe it was MySpace at the time.
I don't know quite that far long ago. But
sorry.
Chris Peterson was available, and he had some great credits, and I really liked his work. And we collaborated on a short pitch and sent it out to all of the major indie publishers at the time, which are pretty much the same ones as today, plus a few more. And didn't quite get there. We had a lot of really positive feedback from them, but it didn't quite fit in their publishing plans. So it stayed by the wayside after that, and I went on to other projects. But this year, when I decided to do a little crowdfunding and do some self-publishing, I thought, why not bring back this project, which I really liked, even though it's been several years, and see if the artist is still available, and he was, and see if we can bring it back and bring it to an audience for the first time. And so far, so good.
That's fantastic. Talking about sort of pitching to these publishers, and I know that this is issue 1, but what do you see as sort of the planned arc or the run of 9 Lives? Like, how long could this go for? How long is it planned for? Or is that still not yet revealed?
Well, it is a self-contained comic, but we would like to make more. I would like to do 10 issues altogether. Each of the first 9 focuses on each incarnation, and the 10th sort of brings it all together. So you meet Cleo in different parts of history as a different person with different powers, with a completely different occupation each time. And sometimes she succeeds against this killer who also seems to be reincarnating and following her throughout history. Sometimes she succeeds and sometimes she doesn't. And then eventually the survivors kind of figure out a way to work together to stop him for good in the 10th issue. So that's the ultimate goal. But the first issue is a full, complete story, so I don't want anyone to feel like they're going to be left hanging or not get anything complete. But it's got a great beginning, middle, and end, and then hopefully we'll get to do more and be introduced to Cleo in the other time periods, which are really exciting because you have a spy version of her in the 1960s. You have a pirate captain in the 1880s, and even a CEO in the present day. So it's all really exciting.
Very cool. And hey, Chance, can we bring up some of these covers that we have? Because I know for the campaign we have two covers, and this is, please keep this up for a moment. This is the variant cover. Steve, please tell me the name of this artist again.
This is Lee Musop Tran, who works on webtoons and has a very large social media following. And I commissioned him to do this variant cover. This is the first piece of art we had created for Nine Lives, and I sent him a whole bunch of mood board stuff based on actual movie posters from the 1920s. And I said, you can do an homage to one of these, or you can do something just kind of inspired by it. And he chose the inspired route. And I really like the villain Antony appearing in the smoke behind her. I think that's a really neat idea. This is a great cover.
And how did you find him? Did you just reach out on Instagram, or are you a webtoon fan, or like what was your exposure to Lee?
Well, I've done webtoons. I launched the webtoon Here There Be Dragons, and in communication with a lot of the webtoon artists on Discord. And I asked around. To various webtoon artists that I knew had really solid followings that we could help promote this. And so I based it not only on their skill, but also their social media presence as any good marketer. And Lee was available, and got this cover done very quickly, and it turned out perfect. So I definitely picked the right artist for this.
Oh, great. And look, we have someone joining us on the live stream here. Hello, Nightingale. Thank you for popping in and leaving us a message there. Steve, mention your webtoon again that you have out there.
It's called Here There Be Dragons. I was a co-creator and kind of the overseer of the web comic, and wrote the first few chapters. And then I kind of turned it over to the artist Distiel, who is running the show solo now. So it's entirely run by them at the moment. And but I have the entire outline that we put together before we got the green light, and it's still pretty much following that. So I really like the way it's going. But I'm not really involved in that anymore, but I was very happy to launch it. And I'm working on a new one for them as well. That's in the planning stages.
When you say for them, is that webtoons or for this group of creators? Okay.
For webtoon, with a brand new artist that worked on the Vixen webtoon. DC and webtoon has several collaborations, and this artist worked on the Vixen web comic that's just ending. So we're gonna do something new that's more of a post-apocalyptic New York with biker gangs type of thing called Interstellar Overdrive, and that is in the planning stages, and hopefully will be out next year.
So you're fairly busy. Aside from Nine Lives, it sounds like you have a lot of other projects that are sort of under the surface or maybe not yet out. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, and of course, working on the follow-up to the Bowie book. We still don't know what the subject is going to be as far as the musician, but I'm talking to dozens of different people in the music industry to try to nail down who we're going to write about next, and what artist and what publisher. But I'm very excited to see where we'll be landing. We may even do a series of books next.
Can I ask, when you say we're talking, who are you talking to? Can you say?
Me and my literary agent Gordon Warnock at Fuse Literary. We're on the phone with someone new almost every day. We can't really say who yet.
Understood.
If you think of the biggest names in music, we've probably had a chat with them to see if they want to do a graphic novel. So
that's very interesting. And can you or can you not say if any artists are potentially attached or interested, or is that too soon to reveal?
Yeah, what we want to do is we want to get the okay from a musician, because we want to make it official, and then we want to kind of present them with some artists and say, these artists are going to draw your likeness. Do you like how it looks? So we get their approval. So picking an artist is a little bit further down the line, but the last book Bowie was done with the Allreds, so we want someone or a team that is at the same level of quality there, if we can.
That's a tall order, my friend, but I know that you could do it. How did the Bowie book come about? And I have a second question, and maybe we'll get to that. But is music sort of becoming a niche for you? Music graphic novels with the success of Bowie, and then whatever's coming next. So I guess first, how did it come about? Second, are you finding this little niche for yourself?
Well, the interesting thing is with the Bowie book, it was 2017, very long time ago now, 5 years ago, and it was the anniversary of Bowie's death. And in the UK, at a comic book shop, they were doing an art gallery. Comic book artists drawing, reinterpreting his album covers, and they did an art gallery, and it looked fantastic. And I thought to myself, no one's doing a graphic novel about David Bowie himself. Why doesn't someone do that? So decided to do it myself, and I found Mike Allred's email address.
Oh my God!
And,
you cold outreach Mike Allred and went up.
It's a cold email,
Oh
and I happened to catch him right as he was finishing Silver Surfer, and he happened to have a hole in his schedule, and he said, "If you think you're the world's biggest Bowie fan, you're wrong, because I'm the world's biggest Bowie fan." So,
wow,
he's a Bowie fan. He'd already drawn Bowie into his Dark Horse comic Red Rocket 7, which I love. And so we connected there. I found an agent, found a publisher, Inside Comics, and we were off to the races. And it took us 3 years to put it together. After that, it came out January 2020. We had a big worldwide tour planned for the book, and then things kind of happened in March and shut all that down.
Understood. But wow, so not only did you write this, but you spearheaded the entire project.
Yeah, I'm ended up being more of a co-writer. Mike Allred contributed a lot to the script, and we decided to be co-writers on the project, with him drawing and his wife Laura coloring. And so it ended up being kind of a mix of all of us in the pot, and it turned out really well. We ended up winning 2 Eisners for the art and the coloring the following year.
It's amazing.
And we got on the New York Times bestseller list for a month at the very bottom. Normally, it's really dominated by manga and kids graphic novels, which is great. So we felt very lucky to sneak in at the bottom. So far, the only comic biography that has ever made it on the list.
Wow, that's a nice feather in the cap, then, man. That's really cool.
Actually, let me correct myself. I believe They Call This Enemy has also made the list, and I think March also. So I think just those 3.
Okay. Yeah. Well, in all fairness, George Takei and John Lewis are not they're not musical artists. The
only music book to make the list so far.
There we go. There we go. And did you reach out to Allred because you knew he was a Bowie fan, or you just loved his work and he happened to be a Bowie fan?
I must have known in the back of my mind. I've been a fan of his for a long time, going back to Madman and X-Force, and I must have known in my head that he loved David Bowie. Actually, I think I messaged some people in the industry when I was looking for an artist, and Phil Hester said, "You got to talk to Mike Allred. He's the world's biggest Bowie fan." So I think he's the one who told me that he was a massive Bowie fan. So I had to get in touch and find out for sure. So that's all it takes in comics sometimes, is being in the right place at the right time. So got lucky.
Absolutely.
So hopefully we'll get lucky again with the next project. Depending on who's the subject is and who's drawing it, would really like to strike gold again if we can.
No, absolutely. Wow. So, and then I guess the second part of that question is, are you finding this niche of, well, maybe I could do these sort of like music biographic novels, and kind of carve this piece of the world out for me? Is that sort of a plan or a thought that you have, or it was fun and let's do it again, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like I really like writing about musicians. I love writing comic biographies. There aren't a whole lot of other people doing it. I really like what Z2 is doing. They're doing some. I love their books. A lot of what they do is they usually will tell stories about the songs. It's more of a, fictional stories based on songs kind of thing they're doing. They do some biographies, which is great.
Sure.
And Bowie was unofficial. So I'd really like to do official books from here on out. But because these take so long to come out, being in the book trade industry and being large hardcovers, is why I'm doing more crowdfunding comics to get single issues out to people and, be able to keep up on my writing and things like that.
Wow. Well, you know what makes a quick turnaround for getting new content out there?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, crowdfunding is the fastest way to get comics to people. I mean, if I had been doing this through Dark Horse IDW, it would be, a years long process and wouldn't come out until late 2023 at the earliest.
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, we it's a double-edged sword because we still have people who are waiting for books that they've pledged to, maybe not quite understanding that, like, hey, we did this because we knew that it was going to take a little bit longer to get everything done. So there is dealing with that, but certainly has its advantages in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But back to Nine Lives, we had mentioned that this book was, almost 10 years in the making. You and Chris Peterson connected 10 years ago on this. You're back together. And the funny thing is, I know when we had a call earlier, with Chris, and he couldn't talk much, but you guys had mentioned like his art style has evolved since then.
Mm-hmm.
Has the story also changed and evolved since then? You're a different writer than you were 10 years ago.
Yeah, I went back and looked at some of my notes because I save everything in Dropbox and never delete a thing, even from that long ago. And I realized that I didn't really know where the story was going at the time. I'd done those first few pages, but I really hadn't plotted out much of it. You're supposed to plot out the entire thing before you pitch publishers, but I really hadn't. I hadn't thought that far ahead. So when I wrote it for this Zoop crowdfunding, I had to start fresh. I had those first 3 pages, which Chris is redrawing, and I really didn't know until now where the story was going and how many issues it was going to be, or even what all of the other incarnations of Cleo looked like. But I figured it out now, and I think that it's going to turn out even better than it would have had it come out from a traditional publisher in the 2010s.
Another benefit is you don't have to go through any editorial notes. This is your creation 100%. You don't have to make any changes or any consolations. This is the story that you and Chris want to tell.
That's true. It is entirely in our heads and without any other cooks in the pot, and it's going to turn out amazing. And we would definitely like to come back and crowdfund more issues, depending on how things go. And so far, things are going really well. Like I said, we're nearly halfway there. There's going to, like you said, there's going to be a little period, of course, but I'm really happy that we've even got someone being drawn into the story so far. Yeah. It turned out to be a really old friend of mine, Sean Kleefeld, pledged to have himself drawn into the story. So I'm going to get his likeness over to Chris and make sure he gets drawn into a prominent place in the story, so we know it's him.
That's great. And for anybody listening who has ever wanted to be in a comic book before, you'll be drawn in by Chris Peterson, who's worked for all the major publishers, has a wonderful art style. Actually, Chance, can we show some of the pages from the book? Let's get some of that artwork up here. And in the meantime, yeah, I love this art. And I know, Steve, you guys had mentioned, redoing some of these pages or like, again, Chris being a completely, I don't want to say completely different artist, but evolving as an artist. To more fine tune some of the images, that we're showing you right now, but which I think are very Darwin Cook / Chris Samnee. That's what I see when I look at this work, and you can't fight with that, man. That's some good stuff right there.
I really like these pages, and Chris is going to use
Chris's cover.
He's using them right now as a template to redraw them. It'll look mostly the same, but he wants to make sure that the whole thing is in his current style. And that cover that you just saw was drawn new for this campaign, and it is kind of more representative of what his style looks like now, which I think is even better than it looked a decade ago. As you can see, she's being chased by an unknown assailant in a 1920s car, who is the killer that's trying to kill her from across time. And So part of the story is finding out, how is she going to get out of this mess?
Awesome. Yeah, this is gorgeous, and I love the colors on that. Chance, if we could pull up the campaign page, I'd love to show. I mean, look, you know, some of the original, and there we are. We've only been live for almost 2 days, not even 2 days. Over 40% funded. If we scroll up, you'll see some of the rewards that you can get for this campaign. Different ways to pledge and back it. But the thing that's cool is, again, I think we had 3 slots for people to get drawn in. So one is taken. There's 2 left. I know that you had some copies of the Bowie graphic novel. Those all are gone.
Yes, as well as the first 3 pages in a kind of original art-esque deluxe print. Those are all gone as well.
Yeah. So guys, if you're thinking about backing this campaign, you better hop on before things are just like no longer available at all. The link, again, you can see it on the screen going by. It's in the show notes if you're listening to the podcast, zoop.gg/c/9lives, just like a cat. Steve, I also wanted to ask, I mean, I'm always fascinated because I love comics, but I'm not a writer. I'm not an artist. I've tried when I was a kid, and I just was never able to do that kind of thing. But when did you kind of get started with writing, and what made you want to, like, was there a certain comic, a certain author, writer, even in traditional prose, that you were like, oh man, this guy, that's who I want to be, or that's who I'm influenced by?
Well, and I've heard this story from at least 2 other writers that I know of. Back in the 2000s, Marvel did this thing called Epic Comics, which was a relaunch of something they had done in the 80s, featuring creator-owned comics. And they possibly foolishly, put the word out to the general public saying, anyone, anywhere can send us a script. And if we like it, you'll become a Marvel Comics writer, and you'll have a piece of the ownership in your creation. This is the first and last time they'd ever done this. And they got thousands of scripts, including one from myself. And I hadn't been a comic book writer before that. That was my first script. Although I had interned at Comics Buyer's Guide in 2001, the old comic book newspaper, and met a lot of people in the industry that way, and did a lot of reviews and interviews there. So I was pretty immersed in the industry anyway, even though I wasn't a professional writer myself. So that was how it began for me, and I just kept writing from there, and kept getting published by different places like Dark Horse and IDW, and I've been writing ever since. So it's been over 10 years, 15 years now that I've been doing this, and it's been great. I've still got a lot of, like I said, the new webtoon is in the works, a new music graphic novel, and then this is only the first of. I would love to do a couple more comics with Stu, with different artists this year, and hopefully return to 9 Lives as well. So that's the plan. Just got to keep writing.
Excellent. And it's very cool. I love hearing about when people actually were in the industry in a different capacity. So working or interning rather at Comic Buyer's Guide. What was your job there? Or were you just kind of getting coffee and making copies, or did you have a little bit more responsibility than that?
Well, I was working with Comics Buyer's Guide, Toy Shop, which was the toy magazine, and Scry, which was the collectible card game magazine. And I was an editorial intern, so I got to edit the articles. I got to lay them out on the page, write articles myself, conduct interviews, review comics, collect information for the price guide in the back of Scry magazine, attend conventions, anything and everything. It was a really fun summer that year, summer of 2001, right before everything happened. And it was a great experience, and really turned me on to the comics industry. I've been in it ever since.
Were you in New York?
I was. The internship was in Wisconsin, but my first job in 2002 was in upstate New York. So it was a couple hours north of where it all happened.
Gotcha. As we sort of wind down here, we don't like to keep people too long here, but I mean, I would love to know, kind of like who some of your influences are, who, if you model yourself after anyone, or if you, pick and, some little details from other writers from before you. Speak to that a little bit if you don't mind.
Well, when I was a really heavy comic collector in college, I pretty much picked up everything that Kurt Busiek wrote, from his stuff on Astro City to stuff for the Avengers and Iron Man. So I would say he's a pretty big inspiration for my own writing style. So I would say a lot of the contemporary writers around that time. I really like Gail Simone's writing style as well, especially her work on Secret Six and Birds of Prey. So the way she's able to kind of balance all of these different plot lines at the same time and bring a lot of humor to her stories is a big inspiration. So I would say those two for sure.
Have you got to meet or interact with either of them since having, a little bit of notoriety now with a New York Times bestseller and, Eisner Award winning type of book?
I interviewed Kurt for CBG at least once, but I don't.
Great.
And I've spoken to Gail before online through Twitter, and she's been very nice. She was, I believe she read the Bowie book and really liked it. So yeah,
that's very cool.
They're both very nice online and great supporters.
Awesome. So some just real quick questions before we wrap up. What's your desert island run? If you're stranded on a desert island, what book or series are you taking with you if it's the only one that you can take?
Well, I got to go with the obvious one that many other people always say. The Born Again series of Daredevil by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli is my go-to run. What I'd really like to get sometime is the artist edition of that, which is the oversized book with the facsimiles of the original art pages.
Yeah.
Because my trade paperback of that run is falling apart because I've read it. I was thinking of replacing it with that because it has all the lettering on it, so it's like you're reading it anyway. It's just very large.
Sure.
So, yeah, that's my Desert Island book for sure.
Well, if you take the artist edition, it'll double as like a weapon or something to like crack open coconuts with. So, good call on that one. And the last one is, who would be your number one choice as a collaborator? No offense to Chris Peterson, but like a dream collaborator for any project, despite the subject matter. If there's one person that you can collaborate with, who would you want it to be?
Well, I've already worked with the Allreds, who were like right at the top of my list.
That's awesome. Then.
So I could say if I had to choose another artist, I think Walt Simonson. He's still working in the industry. He's still at his peak. His stuff is still amazing, and I'd really like to work with him someday before he retires. I think that would be wonderful.
Well, I will throw this out there, is that we have done campaigns that have involved both Kurt Busiek and Walt Simonson. So nice. Let's talk, Steve. Let's see if we can make more dreams happen, everybody. Steve, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on. Again, for people listening, we're streaming live right now, YouTube, Facebook. The videos will live on those platforms forever. You could back the campaign at zoop.gg/c/9lives. The podcast will be on Spotify and iTunes. And Steve, please tell everybody where they could find you online as well.
Well, although it's been down most of the day, you can find me mostly on Twitter at Tropical Steve, which is an old poker nickname. It's just completely meaningless. But you can find me there. And send me a message and say hi.
Awesome. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time. Let's get to the goal, and thank everybody for tuning in. Till next time.
Thank you all.